Real estate negotiation skills are more important today than ever before. So I invited Debbie De Grote. She is the founder of Forward Coaching, a real estate and business coaching company, to talk about the foundation of negotiation, what has changed, how to work with buyers, especially in today's with the new policy and procedure changes. And she has some great advice and a 3-step, very easy to follow negotiation tactics that you will love. So thank you, as always, for listening to the RealTrending podcast so that you could build your business better. I really appreciate all of our listeners and enjoy the podcast. So welcome, Debbie, to the RealTrending podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Always fun to be with you.
Yeah, I love all the content that you write. And so I do want to have our audience, for those who don't know you, I want you to tell them a little bit about yourself and your coaching company.
Well, I've been in the business for many, many years. I started at the age of 18 and I started selling real estate in LA and Orange County. I was the top agent for Century 21 in California, number 3 in the nation for many, many years, and then got into the coaching world about 24 years ago because I just, after 16 years of selling, just discovered I had this passion to really help agents grow and develop their career. And after running a couple of different coaching companies about 14 years ago, decided to launch my own because I really wanted to dedicate it to custom coaching rather than a curriculum kind of cookie cutter type. So my coaches are all 20 to 40 year veterans. And I really think of what we do as deep strategic coaching. And we love it. We say lovingly that we coach the complicated.
That's great. That seems like the most fun, honestly. Always. Yeah. So I know that you do a lot on negotiation, but you have obviously a lot of other topics that you really focus on. So what are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges for agents today, or where do you see a big focus of your coaching going?
Well, what we're working with our clients on currently is really skilling up to be a high-level negotiator. Because now, of course, not only are we negotiating to win the listing, to discuss and win a fee that seller and agent are comfortable with, negotiate the offer, but now we're negotiating with the buyer on a whole different level. And then all this collaboration with agents and sellers around buyer concessions is now a whole additional wrinkle in the world of negotiations. And quite frankly, Tracey, I think that even the best of the best have gotten a little bit rusty because the last few years, negotiations were rather minimal. When you could put a listing on the market and have 25 offers in a day, you're wrapping up the details, but that's not requiring a high level of negotiation. And when a buyer says, hey, I'll pay whatever, regardless of appraisal, no inspections, I'll just buy it. That's not requiring a lot of negotiation. So some of the agents who got into the business in the last few years, they've never really negotiated at a high level. And then the veterans need to brush up those skills and really get ready for the new phase of real estate that's in front of us.
Yeah, and I saw an article, I think from the appraiser update from Fannie Mae, that talked a lot about how they're recommending appraisers reach out to real estate agents because of the seller concessions. How are you training the agents to take those calls and kind of understand what they're looking for?
Gosh, that's such a great question. This is like taking me to back in the day, as they say, because back in the day, I was trained to meet the appraiser at the property, to get on the phone with the appraiser, to, in a sense, promote the value of that property to an appraiser. And I do understand that to a large degree, before they even call to make that appointment, they've often gone online and done their research and maybe even have kind of made a decision. But I think the sooner you can speak to them in the process, the better. And what I used to do is have my seller put together a list of every improvement, the dollar value of those improvements, to really help to justify and promote that value and really get into that discussion with the appraiser, even also looking at pendings that might be higher than your sale, knowing that, well, they're going to close. The appraiser can use them if they're going to close before our date of closing, which then means I have to call that listing agent and say, I need a favor. Can you give me an idea? Here's where mine sold. I know you can't disclose yet, but did yours sell at a higher number where I might be able to use it, for my comparable for my appraiser? So just got to, again, that's all part of negotiation, right? Because we're, in a sense, negotiating with that appraiser, but we got to give them something they can then quantify that in their report and say, this is legit, right? How I arrived at my number.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, seller concessions are a big part of negotiations moving forward. And so you're in it every day. Your coaches are in it every day. What are you hearing from real estate professionals about how they're adapting to the new policies and procedures post NAR settlement?
Actually, it's been amazing. I think of it a little bit like Y2K. Remember, we all kind of thought the world was going to end the next day, and we woke up and it was kind of fine. Same thing happened. I think it was 93, 94, somewhere in that time period, when the internet first opened up for consumers to be able to go online and do their real estate searching on their own. And we were told at that time, within 5 years, real estate agents would be extinct. Well, that didn't really change. I mean, it did change things, some things for the better, and some things we prefer the old way, just like today. But I literally, Tracey, talked to hundreds of agents in a month. I was just at the car convention last week. I'm flying to an event in Arizona, then on to Santa Fe, New Mexico, but all across the country, everybody is adapting just fine. I think the biggest irritation has been all the new forms and documents to master. And then sometimes you get a mastered and then they come out with another, right? So that's been a bit irritating. And we're a little bit in that messy middle where some of the consumers know what's going on. Some of them haven't heard of this or paid attention. And so we're advising our coaching clients, don't go into deep, elaborate explanations. Just, we have some new national rules around how real estate is conducted and how the fees for buyer agents are handled. And let me just go through with you what those options are, Mr. Buyer or Mr. or Mrs. Seller. And really, today's consumer, they're very savvy. They want to engage in the process. And I kind of think going through those options, it's actually really cool and very professional.
Yeah, I was with a group of brokerage CEOs a couple weeks ago, and one of the things they mentioned is that their listing agents are getting a lot of calls saying, "Is your seller offering compensation?" And the listing agent is saying, we're you put it in the put it in the offer. Like we're not offering any like set compensation. And they are getting some agents who are like, well, fine, we won't make an offer, and they're not quite comprehending what that means, that they're not saying they're not going to pay at all. They're just saying it has to be negotiated on their side first, with the buyer and the buyer's agent. Are you seeing some of that?
Yeah, from the agents who have not taken the time to watch the town halls in their local board of realtors, or their brokers haven't given them the proper training. So they're still in that messy middle and a little bit confused. So they may get left behind if they don't skill up, right? So Every area is different. Even inside where I'm located here in California, even inside of California, how those concessions are allowed to be discussed. So the safest thing we can say here today, because we're not attorneys and we know everything is different, is that you can say, of course, my seller wants to work with a great buyer. Put your best offer together. If concessions are needed, include those, and we absolutely will review. Now, there are some states that even have a form where the seller can say, it's okay to say that I will do concessions. I will consider. I have heard, I'm not verifying this because it's not here in California, that some areas will even let a seller state an amount. So that's something you really need to know locally. Talk to your broker, talk to your board of realtors, get that proper language, and you got to stay in that zone, because if you don't, you're breaking the rules, and you will get caught.
Yeah.
They will correct you on that. So yeah, you got to follow the rules.
Absolutely. And I wanted to talk to you about some negotiation strategies as a buyer's agent working with a buyer. When they have to fill out that form, there's several forms, but the one that actually
Right.
has them working together. So what are some words? What's some advice, some strategies that you have when negotiating that?
It's funny that 25 years ago, I started doing this because I was working with about 85 buyers a year. I was exhausted with the buyers that were running me around town and ending up not buying from me. And I found a couple of agents in the country that were doing this. I'm like, I'm doing it. So I really did it just this way. I put the fee in the agreement with the buyer that I wanted to earn. And I said, if the seller will pay, great. If we buy for sale by owner and they won't pay, you'll need to pay. And it worked. Well, now it's going to work even better because it is the new normal, right? But the steps that we're teaching, in fact, I'm doing a webinar this afternoon on managing your buyer listings, quote, buyer listings, because now that buyer agreement is, in a sense, a commodity, just like a listing agreement, right? So step one is really improving your buyer consultation process, and even a nice buyer consultation pre-package or package that you review with them just exactly as you would with a seller. So the steps I recommend, it's what always worked for me, is step one, the deep dive into their needs, wants, and the big goals, because that builds rapport, right? Get them to talk about that, get that foundation of rapport going. Step two, discuss your home search services. When you choose me, these are the things I'm going to do to make sure this is an amazing experience. And then step three, here's how we'll move forward and work together. And here are your options around how my fee is paid, right? So I really recommend going in that order. I've tried it all the other ways. It didn't work as well. And so today we're going to talk about even managing like the expiration dates and how often to go back and speak with your buyer to adjust criteria. So just transfer all those great things you've done for a listing, move them over here, and then think of it like, I just need to review the options. So I would say, Tracey, commissions are negotiable by law. Now, for the services that I just reviewed that I will provide for you, I personally work for a fee of X%. Now, there's lots of options around how that fee would be paid. So option number one, we can submit every offer asking a seller to pay a concession to you that will be equal that amount so that the fee is covered. That's option one. If the seller will not pay that full fee, then you can pay the difference or pay my fee, Or you can say to me, Debbie, we'd like to move on to a different property. Try this again because we really want a seller to grant that concession. And the good news is, even though we must write my fee in our agreement together, you're the boss, you're in charge. You're not going to sign and agree to anything that doesn't feel comfortable or right for you. We're going to negotiate together to make sure we do the best we can to get this fee covered. And if we're a little ways apart in the negotiation, and I have to bend or do a little something to help put this together, I'm absolutely open-minded to doing that. So we'll take it a step at a time. And today, you're just engaging me as your representative, and then we'll work together. So, it's pretty easy in a way, because if you remind them, nothing bad is going to happen to them when they sign that, because each step of the process, they're going to be making decisions about whether that deal is financially practical for them or not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love that. I love how you spelled it out as well. I think that a lot of agents will get a lot of value out of that. And I want to talk just in general negotiation mistakes. What are some of the top mistakes that you see and how to correct them?
I think the number one mistake is assuming that you have to be an aggressive hammer, a bulldog. And I see a lot of agents that approach the negotiation that way, and people don't like to work with them, right? Other agents do not like to work with them, and they think that's how they go about winning for their client. I'm such a big fan of Chris Voss, who is the guy that wrote Never Split the Difference. He's the ex-FBI hostage negotiator. And one of the points he always makes, he now teaches negotiation at Harvard Business School, is that a truly fine negotiator, it comes at this with a collaborative approach, a problem-solving approach. They are the calm, cool force in the transaction. He even talks about tonality in the negotiation. He calls it the late night DJ voice. And he says, if you have an aggressive demeanor and an aggressive tonality, you need to understand that will not serve you well in a negotiation. Calm down, slow down, and collaborate. And I think that's the biggest mistake. They think, I'm going to be a tough negotiator. There's a difference between tough, aggressive, and the relentless pursuit of strategically working on behalf of your client.
Yeah, it's funny because I do see more of that have to be right kind of aggressiveness in today's society, just in general.
Sure.
And it's kind of that same thing, the calm approach generally, you're not putting people off. You're bringing them into you. And it's really important. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think we forget that we're not just negotiating with our buyer or seller, but really everyone in the transaction, the other agent, the appraiser, the affiliates, everything you do every day to pull that deal together and get it closed really is a negotiation. And if you're the one that shines as the calm, cool head that brings everyone together. And I think the other mistake is pulling the buyer or seller into the drama of the deal. So for example, let's say, Tracey, that you're buying a home and we asked the seller to pay for some repairs. And the seller and the agent are not nice, and they're rude and they're aggressive. And they come back and say, that's ridiculous. No way. She got the house at a good deal. Never going to do that. So I could come back to you, human nature, and want to vent and say, oh my gosh, they're so crazy. They're so unreasonable. They're not going to do it. Oh my God. Or I can just come back to you with the facts. Tracey, they feel they sold the home to you at a good price. The repairs are about $500 worth of repairs. and they're not willing to do them. So if we want to move forward with the purchase, then I'll help you arrange a vendor who can take care of those, for you, or you can find your own and do them, after the close. So what would you like to do? See, I don't have to, it's not that I'm lying to you. I'm shielding you from the unnecessary drama. Because what would that really accomplish except make you mad? And then egos get involved and the deals blow up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could definitely see that. When it comes to skills, do you feel like, what are maybe the 3 top skills, and what do you feel like has changed in those skills, over maybe the past 10 years? Like, do you feel like the top 3 have changed a little bit based on all of the changes in the industry or the market? Tell me a little bit about what you see as the most important, and is that the same as it always has been?
Well, if I take that and flip it around the question, 40, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even 10, it seemed like the scripting around negotiations was so gimmicky and almost like a witty repartee, like a ping pong match. It doesn't really work, right? So I think that the skills that are critical, one, asking incredible questions, not just to gain information, but to peel back the layers of the onion, really understand their motivation versus their stated position. We've all had sellers that say, I don't have to sell. That's a stated position. But underneath there, what's their true motivation? And how do I use that to inspire them to move forward? So we need to ask really great questions, and great questions that help them self-realize what they need to do. The next thing is be an incredible listener, always. And then I think the third thing, work on those communication skills. I love this book called Simply Said. The author is Sullivan, and he really talks about, in your spoken words, your email, your text, simplify your communications. Get rid of the jargon, get rid of the emotion. And again, going back to being that calm, wise communicator. So I think questions, great listener, excellent communication skills. Those would be my top 3.
I think those are the top 3 skills you need in most jobs, really. I mean, my job for sure. So, yeah, definitely.
Become an awesome negotiator. Everybody in your world likes you better.
Absolutely. This is kind of more of a personal question, but like, have you had an aha moment where you really kind of realized that you wanted something different, you wanted something more, you needed to change the way you were doing business, you needed to expand, whatever it was? And I'm sure you've had many, but like one that really sticks out in your mind where you made a change and it really impacted you or your business?
Yeah, I really do think that for me, if I take it away from real estate and put it to coaching, which is more relevant to my current world, was when I was running a coaching company and I was looking at all the clients that were coming in, and the success that they were achieving was fine. But then I noticed that, there were these gaps because, in fact, the coaching head guru that I was working for would say from stage, I don't want to hear your story. I don't care about your story. Don't tell me your part of the country is different. It's not different. But the truth is, it is. I love that Steve Jobs quote, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the square peg that won't fit in the round hole. We are all so different. Personality style, we use the DISC here at Forward, so we understand their strengths. Every part of the country is different. I'm here in Newport Beach. You can't say that market would be the same as the market in Oklahoma, right? Or the culture of an area that's land and ranch. So we take into consideration personality, we take into consideration their market, their skill set, but also what is success to them. So when I made that decision that in my mind is the coaching that really explodes the result. I had to leave that company and I had to face starting from scratch and starting my own. It's so funny. My husband and I were talking about this last night, that starting your own business is like one of the hardest things in the world to do. I wouldn't want to do it over, right? But taking those puzzle pieces and putting that all together, that was the changing moment for me, and changed everything about how I approached coaching, the legacy I want to create for my daughter who helps me run forward. Because I just appreciate that there's no one way to succeed in this industry.
I think our audience can learn a lot from that, because even if you're just starting a real estate business, I mean, you're an independent contractor, and what you do in your local market will be a lot different than in the properties that you specialize in, and really getting to know, like looking for those gaps and finding those areas that you specifically can fill or, excel at, can really make a difference in how successful you are.
Oh, for sure. In fact, I would invite everyone, they can go to the forwardcoaching.com main website. They'll see a link there to take their DISC assessment totally for free. And it will immediately send you a 25-page report, and read that report. Because for an example, Tracey, if they're a very low driver, they're not going to be someone who's going to love doing cold calls. And they can tell themselves they'll do it. They can do it for a couple of weeks, but odds are it's not going to stick. But if they're very high IS, influencer and people and steady, they would love a networking group. They could really shine in social areas and activities. So really know yourself, find your best path. Contact us if you have questions about the DISC. But then also, to your point, Tracey, every market is presenting new opportunity. So what are those opportunities in your market? Where are the must-move sellers? And going into those niches can be really awesome.
Definitely. My last question is, what advice or strategies do you want to leave the audience with as far as finding success in real estate?
Well, talk to more people. That's really the bottom line. When I travel around the country and talk to people, I often ask them, how many purposeful outbound conversations, either eye to eye or ear to ear, but not texting, not emailing, that's all fine, but actual conversations, do they have a day? And the common answer is 2 or 3 a week. It's not enough. And if they say, well, my business comes to me, that's great, but it's also not predictable or duplicatable. So we recommend to our clients that they have 5 lead gen areas that they choose. Past clients would be one, open house could be one. We help them choose based on their personality. But if they have 5 things with a simple but strong action plan, and that's dropped into their schedule and they're doing it every day, now you have a business without gaps, because one or the other is always paying off. And most of our clients do at least the 10, 10, 10 each day. 10 good quality conversations, 10 emails to create a new opportunity, 10 text to create a new opportunity, and nice little icing on the cake, 10 handwritten notes, if you're willing to do that. And just imagine, take that, because that's really, if you do all 4, 40 connection points, multiply that over 48 weeks of the year, 5 days a week. That's a lot of connection. You're going to be just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Debbie, thank you so much for joining the RealTrending podcast. We appreciate you taking the time to be on with us.
Awesome. Anytime. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
and good luck, everyone. You're going to be fine. A year from now, this will all be normal.
Absolutely. Thanks, Debbie.
Bye-bye.